Good day, everyone. Welcome to Blacklogic. Trump allies claim Epstein birthday book signature is fake. Experts say otherwise, as well as some of his family. Israel orders Gaza City evacuation, sparking chaos and humanitarian fears. ICE launches midway blitz in Chicago, detaining dozens in immigrant crackdown. Justice Kavanaugh defends ICE raid, says judges shouldn't intervene in enforcement. Critics accuse Supreme Court of shielding Trump through shadow docket rulings. Caribbean and African tethers blamed for escalating tensions with foundational Black Americans. And believe me when I tell you this, ladies and gentlemen, this is going to be a good one. Well, let's kick this off with the Epstein birthday book bombshell. Trump team says that Bondi drawing and signature is totally fake, but the handwriting analysts in hell, even Mary Trump says it looks 100% his style. Handwriting experts compared letters. The signature matches Trump's from the 80s and as well as the 2000s. MAGA pushes it as a very political hit job, but the evidence says otherwise. Cue the defamation lawsuit drama. And, you know, at this point, ladies and gentlemen, I'm believing that people who are claiming themselves to be quote unquote MAGA, that they are delusional. Now, I have some people who revolves around this MAGA crowds. I have some people that I'm affiliated with, and some I may even call friends to a certain degree. Of course, I'm not affiliated with anything like that. I just affiliate with the truth here at Blacklogic. But nonetheless, when I look at this, stating that experts are saying, no, this is 100% from recollections of the 80s as well as the 2000s. Even Mary Trump stated that this looked 100% his style. Now, granted, there's people out there, forgers, people who deal in fraud, who can mimic his handwriting, who probably can get it down to a breaststroke, so to speak. But this, given President Trump's past as well as his present, this would not be a surprise that this is his handwriting. Okay. Some of the remarks he made on that coach bus, remember he was saying how he treats women to a certain degree. Again, we cannot act as if everything that is against President Trump is defamatory, that it's a lie, that it's fake news, that everything is fake. Now, has he debunked some of the things through evidence or swaying of certain federal judges, Supreme Court justice? In some degree, yes. Does that mean that everything he has done has gone wrong? No. But this quite possibly is 100% Trump's signature. We don't need to get into the weed about things because, again, it's kind of if you were going to look for a job, look for employment. The only thing that they have to go off is your resume, which is your past work, right? You could still be in a current job, so to speak. You could be working on certain projects, doing certain tasks, but nonetheless, your resume is of your past work. Just like anything else, your track record more than likely gives indicators of some of the things you may be doing today or even in the future. Because some people believe that some people just won't change. Other people have changed 360, but most people, they stay in a rut. They stay in the dungeon, so to speak. And some of the hallmarks of their personality and characteristics and even attributes stay the same. So again, where do I lie with this? Because usually I say, leave it in the comment section, but I believe this is signature. And again, I'm not 100% against Trump. I'm not 100% for Trump. I'm just trying to look at it from my perspective and my purview. Okay, this is my opinion that indeed, this is Trump's signature, full stop. Full stop, ladies and gentlemen. I think we should not dwell away or divvy away from the truth itself. Now, Gaza City is in panic mode. Israel dropped leaflets telling residents to evacuate now ahead of a ground offensive, and hospitals are clearing out. Famine is rapid. Do not forget about the starving children as well as the men and women in Gaza, and people have nowhere safe to go. It's a humanitarian nightmare unfolding right before our eyes, ladies and gentlemen. Nothing has changed in Gaza. I digress. Matter of fact, let me retract. A lot of things have changed in Gaza. The situation in Gaza is becoming more dire. It's becoming more destructive. More and more people are dying each and every day because of the famine. And then, and I'm gonna blow this up for you guys so you guys can see for view. They're dropping leaflets telling people of Gaza, the Palestinians in the region, to evacuate. All right. So what's important about this is they wanted an entire city, an entire region of Palestinians to evacuate. Now, the reports had there was roughly around 2 million people that lived in Gaza. Now, of course, of the chaos and destruction and war against Hamas, it's probably only roughly around 1.5 million left in Gaza because there's some people who already evacuated. So, I mean, the tell of the tape is this, ladies and gentlemen. What happened to intel? What happened to really operating in Gaza with a scalpel versus a sledgehammer? And this is what they've been doing. They have been demolishing buildings. Like, again, if you have tanks, you have rocket launchers and missiles and all those things, and you're doing targeted attacks, the entire state of Gaza is in rubble right now. We're talking about 90%. There's very few buildings standing, and of the buildings standing, none of them are livable, by the way. So now you have dropped leaflets. Now, I'm going to tell you why this doesn't make any sense to me. Because if you believe that Hamas is in the region, and then you're dropping leaflets to give Gazans that, hey, we're about to bombard, we're about to destroy, we're about to take over Gaza, and we don't want any innocent people to be killed, so it's best that you evacuate. Now, if you notice, majority of the Hamas fighters cover their faces. The only thing that you can see are their eyes. They cover their head, sleeves, hands, they have gloves, everything. You can't tell any identifying traits, marks. If you try to do facial recognition, they already tried. You cannot tell who these people are. The only thing that you can see are their eyes. That's the only thing that you can see. With that being said, ladies and gentlemen, here's my point. The only thing Hamas has to do is take off their uniforms and then flee and evacuate with the citizens of Gaza. And then guess what? Israel will come in. They will probably patrol. There may be some fighters still left. I mean, because here's the thing. The only thing you're going to do is move the terrorists. The only thing that you can do is move the terrorists. What happened to the humanitarian aid? What happened to supporting and resourcing the people who are in dire need? Because in my opinion, we need to have reports of upstanding citizens of Gaza, upstanding Palestinians who will report these terroristic people. That way they can have a partnership and then start to render humanitarian aid as well as start to rebuild structures in Gaza. But in my opinion, that's not the ploy. That's not the mission. The mission is to go in, destroy the remaining parts of Gaza and rebuild Gaza in Israeli, in the eyes of Israel, the way Israel want Gaza to be built, right there by the waterfront. So everything that Benjamin Netanyahu, the prime minister of Israel, stated that he was going to do, he's doing, regardless of what President Trump is saying. When I talk about these wars of foreign and how America is tied and connected to it, because that's the only way why I'm reporting on it, because we are part of this. We have been funding and supporting Israel at every turn, every wake, and every action they've been making. We've been supporting this. So in some regards, people have been alluding to the fact that America is assisting and supporting a genocide in Gaza of all of these Palestinians. And now they're dropping leaflets say, hey, listen, we're about to come in. We're about to destroy, kill, murder, pollute, plunder, ravish the entire state of Gaza for what is left. And then now that you have all of these people in Gaza with nowhere to go and no resources to go anywhere to evacuate, what do you think is going to happen to Gaza? In my opinion, and a lot of others believe this is going to be a new part of Israel that they're going to once again expand. Slowly but surely, Israel is erasing Palestine altogether. You have East Jerusalem and the West Bank left. After they take over Gaza, and it seems as though they will be the last ones, the two regions of Palestine left, unless Western powers step in as well as the UN step in to stop this. But it looks as though, I don't know what Israel has on America. I don't know what Israel have on the UN, but they must have something very, very powerful. And this is something a group of friends of mine were talking about this, that if anything that Israel has on America is the recruitment and employment of Nazi scientists and researchers who created the atomic bomb. This is some of the conjecture and rhetoric that I was talking over the weekend, because I'm really trying to think, how is America repaying Jewish Holocaust survivors, the state of Israel, for the treacherous employment of Nazi scientists and researchers, as well as German and Nazi cryptologists who helped us. They helped us encrypt a lot of our information and intel that we was relaying to Allied forces during the time. That's the only thing I can really come up with. I'm pretty sure there's maybe some other reasons, because do not forget, when President Obama was in office, he gave $12 million plus year over year to Holocaust survivors and their descendants. Okay, because I know a lot of people like, oh, well, that was for the people who survived the Holocaust. No, and their descendants, 2-3 generations past, reparations in cash payments. This is not conjecture. You can look it up. He did it in earmark money, right? So the way America does reparations, the way they do the Indian affairs, the Indian Bureau of Affairs, or the Indian Bureau of Affairs, forgot the right arrangement of the words, no less. They do it through organizations that they create, and then that money is disseminated to the aggrieved party. Okay, but still to this day, anytime that Foundation of Black Americans bring a reparation, oh, just get off your butt, you lady Negroes. And of course, they're going to use more defamatory and discouraging words. But nonetheless, they would like to tell us these things, but other groups who have received reparations from America, like Holocaust survivors and 2 and 3 generations of their descendants, as well as Native Americans in this country. And we won't even talk about the Japanese internment, because those people received $20,000 during their time, but they are the people who were harmed. But we're talking about people who have not been harmed, but their ancestors have been harmed, like Native Americans, like Holocaust survivors. Again, their descendants are still receiving reparations from the United States American government. So that is why that's important to bring up. This is just another sign that, again, Israel is taking over Gaza.
I promised you a few days ago that we will take down the terror towers in Gaza, and this is exactly what we are doing. In the past couple of days, 50 such towers were taken down by the Air Force. Now all this is only an introduction to the SIFTA, to the powerful main act, which is a ground maneuver of our forces who are now assembling and organizing into Gaza City. And this is why I say to the residents of Gaza, I take this opportunity. Listen carefully. You have been warned. Leave now.
That is absolutely bonkers to me, ladies and gentlemen. He's telling people who do not have vehicles, who do not have any resource to take whatever meager belongings that they have left, let alone their children. So now they have to walk in the Middle East, no less, to East Jerusalem or the West Bank, because Israel is not allowing any Palestinian refugees or asylum seekers inside of the country. America has stopped any Palestinian trying to flee Gaza for any reason from entering America. Now, again, we could talk about immigration. You know how I am with immigration, family. People should come here legally and not speak out against. I digress on that, but this is treacherous. This is, in my opinion, straight evil, by the way. Because again, if you want people to evacuate and you know that they don't have any resources to do so, then why not provide aid for them to evacuate to a safer part of Palestine? That's the questions that I have. Now, over in Chicago, the pitch perfect name Operation Midway Blitz is underway. Trump has ordered ICE to swoop in and targeted illegal individuals, even flower vendors and commuters, which he should, because they are legally in the country, no less. Now, critics say that the arrests are arbitrary, stirring in fear in Latino neighborhoods, but Trump folks preach public safety and local leaders aren't buying it. Now, some of you may raise alarm behind this, but I do not, because if you are illegally in our country and you did not come by through illegal means, they are wanting Americans to have a soft spot. Now, being a foundational Black American myself, that's very hard for a group of people who've never shown the so-called Black and brown unification that all of these politicians have pushed to Black Americans, stating that there's some sort of Black-brown alliance. And don't get me wrong, not all Latinos, not all Hispanics on the rhetoric that a large portion of their community have disdain from Foundation Black American and have shown discrimination and racism towards our group. So again, don't get me wrong, I'm not stating all Hispanics or all Latinos, because that would just be false. But nonetheless, there have been a great many of them, especially in social media and even on governmental levels. By the way, of California, I know you guys heard the rhetoric that came out of that, of calling us monkeys and all the sorts of very racist terminologies. So again, when it comes to illegal immigration and for them to be deported, now it doesn't matter what ethnic and or race, but if you're illegally in the country, I don't care. You can be from East Europe, West Europe, Asia. It doesn't matter. If you're here illegally, then you need to go. It's simple as that. I don't think anybody should be fighting for illegal immigration. And as I told you guys this probably a week or two ago, that President Trump had a lot of these Supreme Court justices in his pocket. And here's why the courts probably won't stop ICE raids for Supreme Court justices like Kavanaugh, because he stated that judges aren't policymakers. They only uphold the law. They don't set it. The court just lifted restrictions in the LA immigration case, sending a message, enforcement trumps courtroom appeal. So again, we might see National Guards back in LA as well. Because, you know, President Trump is no friend of Gavin Newsom. So again, he may just be doing it to burn his hide, spurs in his side. So again, who knows with this? Because again, when you have Supreme Court justice like Justice Kavanaugh to come out and state these things, and I'll just read a little bit here. He said the Supreme Court has stepped in to prevent a rogue district judge from hamstringing the executive branch and performing core executive functions under Donald Trump. And once again, the court's conservative majority has dispatched this order without explanation over an angry and outright dissent from the court's liberals. This time, however, Justice Brett Kavanaugh stepped in to explain what was going on. The court ordered this morning in Noam versus Vasquez Perdomo stayed in August 1 ordered by District Judge Messiah from Pong of the Central District of Court, a Biden appointing and former Obama Justice Department official. So again, they're having even infighting when it comes to federal judges as well as the Supreme Court. And Justice Kavanaugh said that we are not policymakers. We only uphold the law. And again, I will have to agree. That is why the Supreme Court justice is in place. They are there to uphold the law. And in some cases, Roe versus Wade, to overturn the law. Again, uphold the law, overturn the law. Supreme Court justice can do no wrong. And again, when you have them in the pocket of President Trump, they're going to fall in line. Because again, Supreme Court, and this is by the way of the Rolling Stone, the Supreme Court is Trump's partner in crime against America. That is what they're stating, ladies and gentlemen. That is what they're stating. No one's making this up. And this is how the Supreme Court systematically leaning Trump's way. Emergency shadow docket orders are piling up and lower courts get sidelined. Critics argue that this undermines transparency and due process and that the court is becoming commission judge, jury, as well as executioner, as well as the executioners. And I've said this long before they even made this report that, again, they fall in line with President Trump. Even though they can't be upseated unless they do something very egregious, Supreme Court is the only level of the government that they can stay in position, in seat, until the day that they die. They will have to do something so fraudulent, so murderous for them to be upseated from their position. But no Supreme Court justice can be removed unless they stand down or they die. Just to think, we say we don't live in a communist country, but in some regards we do. We say we don't live in a socialist country, but in some regards we do. Welfare, EBT, that's a form of socialism. Social Security, even though that they tax your wages and they set aside money for you in your elder age, they invest that money into the stock market. And then they try to provide a substantial way of living so you can suffice your life in your elder years and your golden years with Social Security. But ladies and gentlemen, that's a form of socialism. CHIP, CHIP, that's a program that provides, health care and monies to women with children. WIC, Women in Care, they provide milk and eggs and other government subsidies. These are all forms of socialism, but we live under the guise of capitalism. So again, if we have social structures within America, we don't live in a true capitalist society, do we not? We live in a hybrid. Just as well as people state that this is a good old democracy. Well, ladies and gentlemen, according to the Constitution, this is a republic. So are we a hybrid when it comes to the government? Absolutely not. This is 100% a republic because, again, once you vote, you have no power. People would like to tell you, hey, listen, if you don't vote, there's nothing that you can tell me because you don't have a voice. Well, where's your voice after you vote? Oh, it's with the person I voted with. And then what they can do with your vote. When President Trump was elected and selected to be president, did he ask for a vote for you guys who select his cabinet? Did you guys put the Department of War Chief, because it's no longer Department of Defense, Department of War Chief Pete Hegseth into office? Absolutely not. You had no say so. Only Congress chimed in for the confirmation hearings. All the people, Pam Bondi, all the people he put in place and all these very powerful positions, we, the people, had no say so. We have representatives, thus the republic, that confirm these people to be in place. So we, the people, believe it or not, live in a republic. I'm sorry for those of you that thought we lived in a democracy because it sounds so sweet, does it not? It sounds so sweet, does it not? But unfortunately, ladies and gentlemen, you live in a republic. So once you vote, your power is now gone. Let's get on something more powerful. Tethers for chaos. Let's get straight to it. Tethers, immigrants from the Caribbean, Africa, have created chaos for foundational Black Americans in this country. Now, let's be clear, because I always have to put the disclaimer out. This is not about hate. This is about history, and this is about truth. So there is your trigger warning. Again, this is not about hate. This is about history and the truth. For centuries, Black Americans have been the frontline soldiers in America's war for civil rights. We endured slavery, Jim Crow, lynching, and systematic exclusion. Yet we fought tooth and nail to open the gates of opportunity, not only for ourselves, by the way, but for every so-called minority in this country. In the Civil Rights Act of 1964 and the Immigration and Nationality Act of 1965 were pushed through our blood and sacrifice of being Black Americans in this country. Those laws became the foundation for all non-white immigrants, Asians, Hispanics, Caribbeans, African, Indians, to come to this land and build new lives. And even to a certain degree, ladies and gentlemen, I said all non-white immigrants. Let me take back one part, except for Irish and Italians. They benefit for civil rights as well. So I cannot exclude those groups as well. But here's the kicker, no less. The very people who benefited from our blood have often become one of the most hostile to our group. Do you guys recall W.E.B. Du Bois warned us back in the early 20th century? He wrote about how mass immigration harmed Black Americans. He documented how immigrants were given preferential treatment in labor markets while Black workers were locked out by racism. He saw how this competition deepened Black unemployment and poverty. The warning signs were there, and yet we ignored them. Let me ask you this question. That all these immigrants, especially those who derive in their origin from the Caribbean and Africa, did they create the now today YNs that we call the young Negroes that are on the block with their pants sagging? Did they by chance create them, or am I just giving excuses? Or did mass incarceration by taking fathers out of the home by the way of Senator Biden when he was in Delaware, and the signing of that law by the way of President Clinton, Bill Clinton, that is, or William Clinton, but nonetheless, did they create YNs? I'm getting to a point because, again, we have people to come inside of our culture and masquerade and cosplay and act as if these are Black Americans up until the time they reach a sex. Are these sleeper agents within our culture? I'm just asking. The warning signs were there all along, and yet, because we're so loving, because we're so accepting, we ignore them. Now, Dr. Claude Anderson took it even further. He said, executing immigration policies without mitigating the negative impact on Native Black Americans is illegal, unconstitutional, and immoral. 6th generation of immigrants have been fast-tracked into the American dream, while foundational Black Americans remain at the very bottom of it all. And the official, we have been named, labeled, and deemed the official underclass of this nation. I want you guys to think about that, because we have people who are foundational Black Americans who speak against foundational Black Americans. And anytime you bring up history that are facts, that are truth, based by statistics and evidence, they will still say, what about today? As if any group in this nation have been through and gone through with our ancestors and what we go through today, as if it's all been washed away. Lies. The very people whose shoulders everyone stand on are left broken and at the knees. So now, if we were to fast forward today and we look at the workforce, and if we look at corporate America, who gets diversity hiring first? Who gets diversity hiring preference? Caribbeans, Africans, foreign-born Blacks. The Bureau of Labor Statistics show that foreign-born Black workers often have higher employment rates than Native Black Americans. And believe me when I tell you this, they will tell you the same. You guys are more unemployed than we are. Yeah, we may be doing Uber. We may be working at Burger King or McDonald's, but we are still more employed than foundational Black Americans. Let me guys tell you the utter truth that you guys have been missing. And I want to know why. And you want to know why. Because employers are more comfortable hiring someone with a West Indian accent than someone descended from Mississippi sharecroppers. This is structural discrimination disguised as diversity. Look at all the Black people we have. I want you guys to go to the airports in New York. Go to LaGuardia. Go to any of the airports in New York. Step off the plane. And I want you guys to ask yourself these questions. All the Black people you see working TSA and cleaning floors and driving throughout the airport and delivering elderly people to their gates, people who may have a handicap or whatever to their gate. Where are all these people from? They have dark-colored skin. They have some of the same characteristics as I do, some of the same phenotypes. But as you listen in close, they speak in another language. As you're looking in close, they don't look like foundational Black Americans. Some do, some don't. How are they getting all the jobs? Oh, because you guys are lazy. You guys didn't fill out an application for this job. That's why. Oh, really? Huh. Excuse me. But the evidence shows otherwise, ladies and gentlemen. I want you guys to look at the economics. Immigrant groups from Asia to Nigerians come together. They pool their resources and build businesses in our community. How did they get these resources? That is because systematic oppression, which a lot of people say doesn't exist for Black Americans, which it does, had been given those jobs simply based on the fact that they're immigrants. So now they have more resources by the way of the jobs that they receive from a very oppressive system that don't want to see Black Americans in place. They don't want to see the native Blacks of this land in place. Just to start businesses in our communities. And I blame us for allowing that to happen, because the only reason why they can build businesses in our community is because we are patrons, because we are consumers of the products. If we want to run our own businesses, then we have to start patronizing these businesses. It has nothing to do with them. They are doing what the government allows them to do, whether it be local, state, or federal. This has nothing to do about hate by another group. This has everything to do with empowerment for foundational Black Americans. If Black American women want to own their own hair shops and sell their own beauty products, then you have to stop going to the shops in the hood. You have to stop going to the shops in the suburbs and patronizing people who do not give back to your community. You cannot ask people from another country. You cannot ask people from another race. Stay with me. You cannot ask people from another ethnic that's taking money out of your pocket and out of your community for the products that you want, that they're not giving back to your community. Why in the hell would they do that? They take your money and they go to their neighborhoods, they go to their community, and they circle a dollar 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10 times instead of patronizing or putting money back in your community. Because why would I do that? You're not my people. You're just a consumer. I want you guys to really dig deep in that. Because sometimes you might have to go to Walmart. Sometimes you may have to go to Target just to prove a point that you will not be supporting any business that don't support your neighborhood and or community. Because they open stores in our neighborhoods and they profit off of our culture and yet treat us as second-class citizens, even in our own blocks. Because, data from the Small Business Administration, it proves this, that foreign-born entrepreneurs have higher startup rates than native-born Blacks, than foundational Black Americans. Not because they're better, not because they're smarter, not because they're more innovative, but because the government programs and banks give them easier access to loans that we are systematically denied. How do we overcome this blockade? How do we overcome this hurdle? Group economics. Because we understand the tether class and a lot of these immigrants, they come here to kill, steal, and destroy. Not literally in some regards, but very figuratively. And then there's social media and culture. Notice how Afrobeat and dance hall music, all of these things are now dominating, okay? In some regards, how this sort of music that comes from African and Caribbean influences, they can cosplay as Black Americans. They copy our slang, they wear our fashion, they use our struggle, but they would tell us you don't have any culture. You're living in our culture. You're literally exuberating every piece of our culture. What are you talking about? They copy the very words that we state. They wear our fashion as if we do. And then the algorithm rewards them. The YouTube algorithm, the TikTok algorithm, the Instagram algorithm. Because when foundational Black Americans speak raw truth, we're shadow banned, but people will tell us we're not shadow banned. And then we're demonetized and silenced. We are punished for being authentic while others get rewarded for playing us. This is the chaos This is the chaos that I'm referring to, ladies and gentlemen. This is the sabotage. This is what I'm referring to. Our elders, they made a tragic miscalculation. They believed that unity with every non-white group would build a coalition. When they brought in the Vietnamese into the black neighborhoods, that's your nail shops, by the way. When they brought in the Koreans into the black neighborhoods, that's your beauty shops, by the way. When they brought in the Middle Easterners, as well as the Ethiopians and Somalis, they opened up 7-Elevens and gas stations. These are the businesses that once were black. And all the construction jobs, they brought in Hispanics. And they use these other groups as buffer classes as systematic oppression continue to keep us unemployed and living off the tit of the government. But our ancestors, our elders, unfortunately, and I understand during that time, the strategy that they imposed. But this was a tragic miscalculation. They believed that unity with every non-white group would be a coalition. Instead, many of these groups came here with anti-Black American ideology baked into their minds. And the ones that I go after the hardest are those from Africa as well as the Caribbean, because they look like us to a degree. They use the very slang because a lot of them are first and second generation that grew up around us. So they speak like us. They sound like us. And what else? Certain people from countries in Africa, they were like, oh, you want to drop the African from America, because we are a different group. We've been in the Americas for thousands of years. We've had reports early as the 1400s of Black people being in America. A Nigerian doesn't call himself Kenyan. A Kenyan doesn't call himself Moroccan. A Moroccan doesn't call himself as if he was from Madagascar. None of these groups, they're all different. They have a different culture. Some of them are similar in food, but nonetheless, they would say that they are different people. Somalians don't call themselves Ethiopians and vice versa. So we are a different group. See, here's the thing. If we understand that majority of slaves out of Africa, roughly 5 million went to Brazil, those Africans that were taken to Brazil, they call themselves what? African Brazilians? Or they call themselves Brazilians? I digress. Those Africans that were brought to the Caribbean, to all those countries, Grenada, Jamaica, all of these Belize, all these countries, Honduras, all these Dominican Republic, Haiti, do they call themselves African Haitians? Or they call themselves Haitians? So this is why we call ourselves Foundational Black Americans. We drop the Africa just as well as any other group dropped the African, because they are in a land that they built culture and history with. Maybe that's hard to understand. But again, a lot of these groups come to America with anti-Black ideology. And in some regards, the ideology that they have was given to them by their parents, and their parents have been infused with white colonization ideology from the colonization of Africa and the Caribbean. Think about how a lot of these tethers, not all Black immigrants, let me, as my disclaimer, I'm not referring to all Black immigrants from these countries, only those tethers. And believe me, the tethers know exactly who I'm talking about. They were taught their ideology by colonial powers and reinforced by white supremacy. Instead of joining us, they distance themselves when they achieve their quote unquote greatness from us. They sneer at us. They turn up their noses at us. They even teach their children to despise us. And here's the truth that nobody wants to admit. Black Americans, let's keep it real. We have no friends. Nellie Fuller stated the best. We have no friends. When we march and when we protest, when we rebel, they don't show up in solidarity for us. They show up to co-op. They show up to sabotage. They use our fight to advance their cause, and then they vanish when it's time to demand reparations, justice, or even true equity. Even within our own group, we have had traitors. So I only want you guys to imagine that outsiders come in masquerading as us, speaking for us, especially in politics, like Il Homa, all these different people from all these different countries get into politics to change the very demographics of our neighborhood and communities. And they're leading movements in our name. They do it under the guise and coverage of Black people. But all Black people are not the same. Not all white people are the same. Not all Asian or Hispanic people are the same. They come from different countries. They have different cultures. They have different systematic issues that they're all dealing with in some regards, but none of them are like us. Because when I want you to think about these African and Caribbean tethers, where do their loyalties really lie? Who are they really serving? All the while, the government funds, the government sponsors uplift these tethers because they know one thing: divided, we can never be free. And as I stated before, this is not about hate. This is the recognition of the plot, a recognition that while the world cosplays us, only foundational Black Americans live with the scars, the trauma, and the generational poverty created by the system. Oh, well, you guys been talking this slave talk and Jim Crow talk for 100 and some years. Well, our people were enslaved for 400 years. Can you give us 300 years more to get out of it? And by the way, can you make this a justice society, equal across the board? If a black American and a white American run into the corner store, both with the same gun, none of us have previous records that we are then tried and charged exactly the same. But then that may come down to economics. Well, you need money for a good lawyer. And they know we don't have the money for good lawyers. Only a couple of us, only a certain percentage of us have money for a really good lawyer. So they know that. And then majority of the jurors be what? We're going to have a jury of your peers. Oh, I don't look like nobody from my neighborhood. I see one Black guy over there. I want you guys to think about that. But we need to stop being naive. Stop assuming kinship based on melanin. Stop assuming that because we are married to someone from another country that we should take their side. No, you can be married to whoever you're married to, but you can still be rooted in foundational Black American justice and inequality. You still can do those things. Oh no, we should allow the illegal immigrants to stay because my wife, she was over here legally, then she got her green card. Now she's a citizen. No, don't base our struggle off your love life and your sex life. It's bigger than that. Because in America, skin folk are always not your kinfolk. Some are sleeper agents in our culture, in our society, concisely, consciously or unconsciously aligned with the very system that keeps us down. The time has come for us to draw the line, and not out of malice. No. Not out of malice, but out of survival. Because until we protect our lineage, until we call out the chaos, until we prioritize FBA first, we will remain at the bottom of the ladder that we built. This is without a doubt. Tethers created chaos for FBAs by the way of government support. And unless we confront it, our future will be stolen again. This is not about hate. This is not about division. This is not about anti-immigrant. This is about power. This is about empowerment. This is about us.